Lightworkers Together. This is Val. I did drive out to the park today to talk about this important topic, but we have a little unexpected weather event getting ready to happen. The temperature dropped. With the wind chill, it's 30 degrees, and there is a snow squall coming in. So I'm not going to go outside and do it, even though that is my preference. So what I actually originally wanted to talk about today was self-love versus self-serving love. But after I got back from walking my dog this morning and I sat down and I was meditating and getting ready to drink some coffee, I'll usually have like hot tea or coffee in the morning. And all these downloads came, and it is something that pretty much affects all of us. So this is what I was given to share instead of the other topic. Now this time I actually took notes versus my last video, which was kind of, please excuse the fact that it was a little bit all over the place. What I want to talk about today, which I feel like is relevant to all of us, is why do relationships fail? And how can we change that, or how can we fix that? This, I feel like, is truly relevant to all of us. And I just want to give a reminder that whatever I'm talking about has to do with my personal experience or things that I have learned from other teachers and just people in my life. But the bulk of it is from my own experience. And like I said, I do have notes here because stuff was just pouring through this morning. Now, I have like a little bullet list that I'm gonna kind of go down, but I'll expand on it. And I don't want this to be too long. I think it's better when they're like 15, 20 minutes. We're all very busy, and so there's not a lot of time to sit through something, even though it can be very beneficial to us. It's a little bit easier sometimes to squeeze things in. So I am going to, in the future, I'm sorry, I'm looking over at this giant bird. It's really beautiful. In the future, try to always keep it to like 15, 20 minutes if I can. So bear with me. This is a new thing. This is a little different too for my channel. This is kind of what I've been led to do. And so it's a huge change. So thank you for those that are new to the channel. Welcome. I hope this will be of value to you. So why do relationships fail? And we don't just want to ask that question and look at why, because things should be more about solution. So we want to also look at how to change it. So the number one reason, and again, this is from my perspective, the number one reason that they fail, and this is all from a spiritual viewpoint, is being unhealed. We get into relationships when we have not done any healing or not sufficient amount of healing to, and I'm gonna take some little quotes from some folks and I'm gonna give them credit. So one is from Michael Murdad. If anybody watches him, he's really great and has a lot of wisdom. He's been doing this stuff for a really long time. But what he talks about is a lot of people get into relationships because they feel this lack or like this hole or something that needs to be filled, and they look for that fulfillment in someone else, or they'll see something that they believe is lacking in themselves in this other person, and subconsciously, most times they're not doing it consciously, but subconsciously they're choosing this other person because it's to fill something they feel that they lack. And that happens when you're coming from a place of not being healed. The more we do that healing work, and when we get to that place of being in a place of self-acceptance and self-love and that wholeness within self and your connection to source, you're not building relationships based on what you think you don't have or a lack thereof. So for me, I feel like that's the number one reason. That was something that was very prevalent in my life. And I think it's the case. I've seen it. There are people that I know who have been in relationships that were not good, and they knew that they were not good for them. There were like 1,000 red flags, but they would sometimes break up and then get back with the same people knowing that it was not good for them. So some of it is also patterns that we create for ourselves based on societal structure and based on our own wounding. Number 2, I have feelings of being against each other. This is, so for number 1, the solution would be healing, working on oneself, taking a break, working on oneself, healing things, and then you are going to look for somebody that is more on that energetic level with you, someone who is healed. And we're going to get more into that. But number 2, feelings of being against each other. And many of you may have noticed this in your relationships. And this can be, when I'm talking about relationships, it's not just like a romantic relationship, although a lot of times that's what we're kind of focused on, but it also could be the relationships of friendships, and it can be relationships within your family as well. So anything where you have that loving relationship, right, where love should be the main ingredient, that should be the thing. That's what we're kind of talking about here. So feelings of being against each other, and that's kind of what happens again, going back to being unhealed and kind of putting folks on like a pedestal to a certain degree. A lot of times when people meet someone, there's an impulsivity in it, right? You click with somebody for whatever reason right away, or you're attracted to them, or whatever it happens to be, and you don't pay attention to the things that may not be in sync with you, or may not be for your highest good, right? Or just not compatible in any way. And we tend to put people kind of on a pedestal, and then when things go wrong, as they're apt to do, what happens is then it's kind of like a feeling of each one is the enemy and you're against one another, which is not the way to go about a relationship for sure for any of us. And I go to the example of my daughter and her husband, and their thing is, he said to her one time, they don't have blow up fights, but they can have disagreements. Like, we're human, it's going to happen. You're not going to agree with everything anyone says, no matter how much you love them. But there's communication. And he said to her, we're on the same side, which to me was just such a beautiful, eye-opening thing and a different way to look at it. So if you're in a balanced, loving relationship, I'm not talking about something that you know is not really right for you, but when you're in a balanced, loving relationship where there's healing that's taking place, and you have disagreements, or you have situations where you maybe can't see eye to eye, that's a good thing to remember, is that your other person on the other side of that relationship is not the enemy. You're on the same side, hopefully working toward the same thing. And so then you can kind of find a compromise, right? You can come together on things and work together on them, as opposed to being opposing teams, which is kind of what it is. And that's what we've seen play out in our lives and in society a million times over for so many reasons. So number 3, not a good match. And this has to do with, and it kind of goes back to number 1 of being unhealed, the need to break old patterns. And a lot of times when we don't break those patterns, when we don't look at them and see the pattern and break the pattern, we'll repeat it over and over again. And that is often how we end up with those who are not a good match for us. And not a good match means not energetically in the same space, not kind of on the same path, going in the same direction, wanting the same things, having commonalities and things like that. So you can think about it. Let's say you are, we'll just do a short little example. Let's say that you are a homebody. You love staying home. That's your jam. You come home from work or whatever it is you're doing, and you want to just be at home. You want to relax and stay there. And let's say you meet somebody and you really like them and you hit it off, but they're the complete opposite. Let's say they're an extrovert and they love traveling and going places, and they don't like staying at home. Think about that for a minute, right? It's like, how good of a match would that be? Even if you love someone, right? Or if you care about someone greatly, if what you want in your lives to make yourself happy, right, to be in that self-love place, doesn't match, then that's going to be a constant problem, right? And eventually that's not going to work out. So it's something to take into consideration. And number 4, I put rare exceptions. So there are rare exceptions to the reasons why things fall apart, and also things coming together. And again, I'm going to go and use my daughter and her husband as an example for this one. They are spiritual nature, but they haven't really had a chance to do a lot of healing and things, but they are both in a place of loving each other very much and wanting to work together. Their communication is very, very open. So if you have a very loyal, loving bond, and you're otherwise, I'd say they're like 2 little peas in a pod, you're otherwise very similar in what you want in your life, and you're able to work together on things. So there are exceptions where if you're not really far along on your healing journey, but you have all these other things going for you, and you are approaching things in a loving way, those can be the exceptions to it. But I find that working on oneself and healing oneself is such a good place to start. For real. Know yourself. Number 5, know yourself, love yourself first. And this is the other thing. It's kind of, a lot of times, many of us, if you are coming from certain wounding and healing, or even just such an over loving, giving nature, you will tend to put what you want on the back burner and put what the other person wants to the forefront, right? You will give over to them in, every situation possible, because, in your mind, you're saying, I love this person, therefore, I'm bending what I want, I'm giving over what I want to them. That's not healthy or balanced. And many, many of us have done that. I've lived that pattern so many times. I was happy to finally break it. And it's something that I've seen it an awful lot. And I've even heard people say, well, and we're not talking about compromise, right? Compromise is where, let's say you want to go out to dinner and one of you wants, I don't know, Mexican food, and one wants Thai food. You can come to a compromise on that. Maybe pick it up to go from both places and bring it home and have a nice dinner together and play a board game or do some quality time. But I'm talking about when the person that you're with, the things that they like and want to do are not really the things that you like or want to do, but you are stopping everything that you like and want to do what they want. That's not balanced or healthy. And what's going to happen is eventually there will be resentment that builds up inside. No matter how much you love somebody, your soul is trying to speak to you and get you to that place of self-love, right? And say, okay, maybe this is not the right relationship for you, but a lot of times we don't listen. So the solution to that is really to listen to yourself. And it comes back again to number 1. If you get to a place of self-love and healing and self-acceptance, then you're not going to be giving over in that way to someone else. Again, you can be in a loving relationship and you can compromise and do all those things. So we're not really talking about not compromising. We're talking about why relationships fail, and these are a lot of the reasons why that seems to happen. Another one, number 6, surface level, and not taking time to get to know each other and seeing and accepting them for who they really are. So a lot of times, and this is kind of really driven also by, movies, you see people and they just fall madly in love, and the next thing you know, they're moving in together, they're getting married or whatever. So kind of media and society, Hollywood, everything promotes that. And that's not a healthy way to go about it, because you're not taking the time to get to know that other individual and truly accept them. When you first meet someone, and we all know this, you're going to put your best foot forward. They're going to put their best foot forward, but it's not really an opportunity to see who they are. And you need time for that. It's something that we all seem in a big hurry to do things, and that's not a good idea. And now I'm gonna do like a little quote from Medea. If anybody watch any Medea's videos, she does one talking about how she puts everybody in the category of a tree. You might be a leaf on the tree, a branch, or whatever. But the part that I want to kind of focus on is how it's important. What she says is, when you are not in a relationship, if you've broken up or whatever, she said that time alone, you're not meant to turn around and replace that person with somebody else, you know, like that real quick. That is your time God is giving you to work on yourself. Spend some time alone with yourself. One thing she said that just, I don't know, I laughed out loud, but it's truer than true, is if you can't stand to spend time with yourself, how do you expect anyone else to? But more importantly than that is, it's a chance to get to know yourself, so that when you meet someone else, you are not building or continuing old patterns of jumping into things. You're going to kind of step back and say, okay, I know myself now. I've worked on myself. I've healed things. I know what I like. I know what I'm looking for, and I want someone that's going to be resonating on the same wavelength that I am. Somebody that's, you know, maybe on the path going in the same direction. You don't have to find someone who, you know, you like everything the same, you're doing everything the same. Contrast is good, but you have to have minimums. And you have to be able to be alone. I go back to that with Medea. If you can't be by yourself, there's something wrong there, right? And for some, I know it's very, very difficult to be by yourself, but the work that you have to do on yourself, you need to at least give yourself a couple hours by yourself to do some work. You know, if you're the kind of person where you're like, look, I just can't be alone. I can't do that. I understand that. For some people, it's just, they can't do it. But allow yourself some time to yourself, okay? So that you can understand who you are, so that you can have that love for yourself, heal yourself, and then know what you want from someone else. Because if you don't really know who you are and what you want, then you can't have any idea, you know what I mean, what you're going to be looking for in someone else. That's an important factor. There was a quote I wrote down that says, I love what I don't know about you so far. And that's kind of the thing. It's folks fall in love, you know, head over heels, and there's so much they don't know, but they're falling in love with an image that is created in the mind. So if you meet someone and right off they seem sweet or nice, or, you know, they do something that's thoughtful, you start building things. We all do. We start building this image of this individual in our minds that may not be accurate. That goes back to trying to put people up on a pedestal, which just isn't reality, and that will eventually crash and burn. So we need to kind of have our feet planted. It's okay to have your heart open, but have your feet planted on the ground and have a sense of what it is you're looking for. One thing Michael Murdad says is fasting from relationships, which is something I hadn't heard of before. When I think of fasting, I always usually think of something, you know, to clear spiritually, a channel or dietary, or, you know, something of that nature, health-wise. So I kind of liked the sound of that. You know, a lot of times we just call it, we'll be taking a break from dating, taking a break from this and that to work on myself. So he calls it like fasting from relationships. And I really, really like that. And trying, one of the other things he said, that people kind of jump into things and end up with people who they shouldn't really be with, is because they perceive this hole in themselves, right? And they're trying to fill that hole. And again, that comes back to number one, having things that we have not healed, which isn't good. Go slow. This is another one. This is from Chris Reck on the channel Minnow Pond Tarot, if anyone's seen that. He has a lot of really sage sound advice too. And the one that sticks with me a lot, because it was something that I never was good at. I was like the overgiver, even if I was getting nothing in return, which is a terrible pattern, and went to self-worth. And I had to heal that and break that pattern, which I did. And it took a while. None of this, we're not saying any of this is going to happen quickly, but it's so worth it if we do it. If we do the work, it's so worth it. He's saying the same kind of thing. Go slow. When you first meet someone or you get in a relationship, give a little bit, right? And then see what do you get back. Do you get back an equal amount in return? If you do, give a little bit more. Are you getting the same amount back in return? And I think that's a very wise way to do it, where you're not just following old patterns that aren't good, like I did. I would just hand over all the love, all the trust. I was kind of from the old school of thought of, I'm going to love you and trust you until you give me a reason not to. And we're kind of in some ways taught that, and it's the reverse of what it should be. What it should be is find someone who will earn your trust, right? Who you can, as Michael Murdad says, grow in love with, not fall in love. Because falling really is about that impulsive tripping off the edge and not really paying attention to the things that matter for ourselves. And we all know how a lot of that ends up. Again, why do relationships fail? So, number 8, being unevenly yoked in a spiritual or energetic sense. So for those that are on the spiritual path, and this can even apply to those who are not on the spiritual path, you want someone, and one of the quotes I heard had to do with people speaking of someone who, say, is in recovery from some addiction. If you are in recovery from an addiction and you come out, you don't want to get into a relationship with someone who has that same addiction but is not in recovery, because what is that going to do? It's going to end up pulling you back into a place that's not good. It's just not going to work, because it's not in alignment. And that's part of the self-love and the healing, is you then start having minimum requirements, okay? Which kind of is like our number 9 here, is having a mission and a purpose going in the same direction and having that alignment, which I feel like is very, very important. And you can have your minimum requirements. You can say, okay, when I'm looking for a relationship, whether it's a friendship, whether it's, a romantic relationship or whatever it happens to be, it can even be with your family members, and you can sort of transform those relationships and recreate them and say, the minimum that I expect is what I'm giving, is respect. Respect is number 1. You respect me and I respect you. That's a good basis. We have love for one another, equal love for one another, and that's another good basis. Truth, clarity, things like that. So it's really good once you go through that healing, you know yourself really, really well, and you know your self-worth. So once you know your self-worth, then you can say, these are things that I won't really compromise. I won't move the bar on those things. I can on some other things maybe compromise, but not the core things that matter to you the most. And that's where you do kind of have to set that little line, set that boundary in place for yourself once you get there. So that's kind of a solution. Because a lot of people will say, okay, we're in a pattern of being used to, when we get it or we meet somebody, we get into a relationship, we kind of do the same thing. It's like being on autopilot, and you have to, I think, drop back a little bit and slow everything down. And the minute you kind of slow everything down and be open and communicate that, say, I'm not going to be going impulsively or quickly. This is kind of where I'm at in my life, and I'm going to be taking my time with this. And so if somebody wants to rush you, that's probably a red flag from the jump that may not be the right match for you, right? That's just something for us to think about. And what do you actually want in your life? So if you're looking for a partner or even kind of a friend, because for most of us, especially when we're on the spiritual path, we want to have those deep conversations. We don't want the shallow relationships anymore. You will watch people, friends, family, partners, lovers, whatever, fall out of your life when you are going through that huge spiritual awakening, and when you have a healing. You will see people fall out of your life, and that's okay. It's meant to happen, because everybody's on their path, and that you're not on that path anymore where they are, and they're not on the path you're on at this time. And you have to allow God, source, creator, to bring those in who are on that path, that are resonating with you, and that will happen. It takes time. And again, patience. I feel like One of the reasons why relationships fail also is a lack of patience in things. We are in a society of now, 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 and we have to learn patience with things. But if we do it right from the jump, or we're able to be with someone who you can sit down and communicate these things, and they want to transform it because they're on the same page, you're both on that same page, then that's a good thing. But knowing these things up front is helping us to build a healthy relationship from the start, whichever kind it may happen to be. Take time to work on yourself. Don't be in a hurry. We talked about that already. What do you actually want for your life? And this is part of sitting with yourself and knowing what you want. Because a lot of times what we do is, if we don't really know what we want, if we meet somebody and we're kind of really blown away by them, or we're very much in love with them, we will kind of model our life around what they want. And that is not good. It isn't. Everybody kind of needs to have their own sense of self-worth, and what it is they want. And then the ideal thing is to meet up with somebody and you join together going in that same direction. You can be doing different things, but on the same path. And that's the key for it. Want the best for yourselves as well as others. You know, you want to be in a relationship where, I've seen some weird things with jealousy between couples, which is, it's hard to understand it, but it comes back to insecurities and things. And then that's something to transform in that relationship, because when our partners or friends, family members, whoever it is, when they're doing well, when they are excelling, you want to have that feeling of love and joy, and to celebrate their successes and to be happy for them, right? And if you're not feeling that way, then that's a good red flag of something in that relationship or within yourself, most likely, that needs to be healed. Okay. Quality time together and apart. This is an important one. So I know there are some folks who get in relationships and it's very codependent, right? This is why a lot of relationships fail. There is this codependency, and that goes back to things not healed once again. So you need to be able to also not be in a relationship. I've seen where people are together, they're literally married, and they spend no time together. They go to their separate jobs. When they come home, they're in group things. It's almost like they're afraid to spend time together. And likely that's because they don't have any commonality. I even heard one gentleman say, you know, my wife and I really have nothing in common. They had a child together. They came together because they were in love, but he's like, we don't do anything together. We have nothing in common together. That's a relationship that at some point is going to fall apart. Because if you're not building a relationship, you're not growing it, what happens, right? That's going to end up, that's not going to go well for anybody. So to plan out in a relationship, quality time together, things that you have in common, things that you like to do, and do them together as a couple, or as a, you know, friends, or as family members, whatever it happens to be. You know, those are awesome things to do to help build relationships, but also quality time apart. So each being able to have their time to themselves, to continue to work on themselves, to be with themselves, right? That is just as important as that quality time together. And you have to have somebody, again, when you're in that relationship where you have that mutual respect, you respect that time apart as well as the time together. You want to spend time with somebody. So this is basically most of it. Let's see. I'm just checking. Okay. So this is kind of a funny quote I wrote down. Yeah, have minimum expectations. Don't expect perfection. That's the other one. And that, I think that goes back to just trying to put too much onto the other individual instead of already being in a place where you feel that wholeness. You shouldn't be choosing someone because of their filling out a part of you that you think is missing, right? That's not the case. It shouldn't be the case. Now, should you look at someone and say, what are they going to add to my life? Yes, of course. And what are you going to add to their life, right? Hopefully joy and happiness and learning and things like that, growing together. And there has to be trust in these situations. I heard this song by Pink called Trust Fall, which I was like, that's really a good one, because trust is what's missing in so many relationships. But that's what happens when they're built on shaky, shaky ground. And we're coming at things, imagine two people not healed coming together. And we've all done it again and again and again. It's a cycle to break. And this is how we can break that cycle. I don't even know what this note is, guys, that I wrote. About nobody's perfect. We're all working on ourselves, and we want to be our best selves, and we want to encourage that in the person that we love and that we want to spend time with. Friends, family, lovers, partners, whatever. If you're walking around in a human body, you are having the human experience. So don't be looking for perfection, right? Be kind of open. Have your minimum requirements, but don't have a 10-page list because then you've put yourself in a category where nobody's going to meet that, right? Be open to what the universe is going to bring you, right? Be what you want, right? If you want someone that's honest, be honest. If you want someone that's trustworthy, be trustworthy. Be healed and be the things that you're looking for in someone else, and the universe will bring that match to you. We have to be patient, very patient. So I had promised on my last video that I did, and I'm gonna do these real quick because I feel like this is a little bit long for us, but relationships are so important. No one is an island here. Even those of us, and I'm one of them, who likes to spend a lot of time by ourselves, still needs that social interaction. You know, we're not meant to be by ourselves and doing everything by ourselves. So I had some quotes, and there were two that I kind of muddled on my last video, so I do want to read those real quick, and then a new one I found that's like perfect for this situation. So the first two quotes that I messed up last video, one is, do your little bit of good where you are. It's those little bits of good put together that overwhelm the world. And that's Desmond Tutu. And I think that is a wonderful, wonderful thing for folks that feel kind of overwhelmed by what can I do? You know, how can I make a difference? And I ask that every day I get up, and I'm like, okay, God, you know, what can I do? How can I be of service? So this is a good thing. Do your little bits of good. If there's, you know, sometimes the very simplest things that we can do make a difference. Hold a door for somebody, smile, say a kind word, whatever it is, that all adds up to overwhelm the world. And then the next one, my all-time favorite quote, darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. By Martin Luther King Jr. Love is the key in all of this. Okay, and I will be doing that video coming up tomorrow or the next, probably not tomorrow, I have a birthday party for my daughter, but after that, the next day, I will do one on how the importance of self-love versus, there's a perception in our world that self-love is this very selfish thing, and there is a difference between self-love and self-serving love, and we're going to talk about that. So the other quotes I wrote down was, people were created to be loved. Things were created to be used. The reason why the world is in chaos is because things are being loved and people are being used. Soak that one in, because that kind of had a big impact, and you see it everywhere. There is so much a love of things, material things, and there's nothing wrong with having material things, but love should be focused on people, you know, living beings, our, you know, our pets, animals, the planet, not on the material things. And then I took this from a little book. There's this guy, gosh, I can't remember his name, y'all, but he writes kind of witty and sarcastic and ironic type little things. And he said, yesterday I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today I am wise, so I'm changing myself. And this is the main thing to do with relationships. Why do they fail and how to change them? We need to change ourselves first before we start looking for somebody. And some of it is we don't take the responsibility for why some things don't work. Sometimes it's simply making a wrong choice. And sometimes it's just repeating patterns of things that are not healed, but you have the power to change it. You have the power to have that beautiful relationship you want, because it's out there for all of us. Friendships, lovers, partners, healing and transforming those relationships within our families. And it starts with working on ourselves, getting to that place of self-love. And I promise you, it changes. It changes the way you look at others, and you have that beautiful outpouring of love and peace within yourself and for every other human being. And so you approach relationships very, very differently. It's sharing and it's caring, and we are all one. So I'm going to leave this here. I hope this was helpful. I hope this was of value to you all. I hope everyone has a wonderful day. I'm sending you all love, peace, and unity. Stay well, stay safe, and I'll